Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of FinTech Mavericks, a masterclass on emerging fintech trends with Anish Achyutan. I am Gunjan Kaur, VP Sales at Open and a fintech enthusiast at heart. I take immense pleasure in welcoming Anish Achyutan, co-founder and CEO of Open Financial Technologies. He's here to help us understand what lies underneath the rapidly emerging fintech concepts and its implementations. Welcome, Anish. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Gunjan?
I'm good too, but honestly, I was a bit skeptical, to make it to the shoot on time. But thanks to Ola, I didn't have my car, so I booked it. Interestingly, when I got off the cab, I realized that if 8 to 9 years back, if I would have told someone that you need not interact with the driver and just walk off after completing the ride without having to pay for it manually, no one would have believed, and probably I would have been laughed upon. But thanks to Ola Money and the likes of it, that this is happening. And that's what precisely our topic for today is. Embedded fintech, which has been one of the most transformative trends in the industry. But we would want to hear from the master himself, what's your take on embedded fintech and what is it?
Right. So you already took the example of Ola, and that's exactly embedded finance. Embedding financial services into a non-fintech app is what embedded finance in a very layman's terminology is. And over the last 1 year, there is a lot of talk that's happening around specifically around the term embedded finance, as more and more businesses and softwares are trying to embed financial services into their existing app or service.
So what I understand is embedded fintech is the merger of non-financial service provider with financial services. But I want to hear from you, how do you see the role of the incumbent financial institutions changing, given the fact that more non-fintech firms would now be natively integrating or venturing into financial services?
Right. So specifically, there are like two aspects to it, and traditionally, it's the incumbent banks which everybody was relying on for financial services, offering fintech services. And as rightly you said, now there's a lot of non-fintechs or so-called banking as a service providers or API banking providers, which is offering the services in a much more structured way. It's easier for a developer or a startup to actually go to a similar platform compared with an incumbent bank to actually get the services. But again, the incumbent banks or the financial institutions still will play a major role in this, because at the end of the day, you need a banking entity or a licensed entity to offer the services. And most of these embedded finance players would be offering their platform on top of an existing service providers. There are like certain banks which will be really in the forefront of like exposing their APIs so that others can build on their services. They are the ones who will really you will coexist, or who will also win this embedded finance market along with the fintech players. But those legacy banks who are not able to take their APIs or not focusing on this banking as a service, they are the one who will be actually in the backseat.
All right. So financial inclusion primarily, in which everyone would coexist, whether it's the banks, fintechs, and even the non-fintechs, paving the way for embedded fintech.
Right.
I took an example of Ola, Anish, but if you were to give any real life examples or certain use cases, because that's how the embedded finance is paving its way. Which other verticals, or where do you see additional use cases coming up when it comes to embedded fintechs? Do you see anything in investment or trading? How is the trend going to be like?
So if you look at embedded finance, it's always been there. You took the example of an Ola or a Uber. While it was just a payment service that got integrated, but it was been there for a very long time. Or traditionally, if you look at e-commerce companies, they used to always have a payment gateway integrated, right? Now it's just that it opens up more avenues to offer more different variants of financial services. To take an example, I think you just have to look around. You will find like as many use cases as possible. Take an example of a school ERP provider, which is providing software to a school. And what if like a school wanted to offer a savings account to its children to cultivate the habit of savings? like for example, take an example of an NBS school or XYZ school wanted to launch an XYZ bank account for their students, or take the example of a payroll company. If they wanted to offer a salary account along with the payroll softwares, this can help them generate additional revenues. It can add a lot of value. Or they may wanted to offer an insurance or a card, expense card to their as a part of their payroll softwares. So in every industry which you look at it, there are like multiple use cases of embedding financial services. Even specifically in case of wealth service providers, wherein they can directly allow their clients to do the investments without moving away from the dashboard. Or in the case of an insurtech companies, now they can actually offer the tailor-made insurances as per their the product or the particular use case.
Anish, I took an example of Ola Money in the beginning, right? But we would want to hear from you. What other use cases do you see? Where do you see embedded fintech getting implemented, or on which verticals? Or do you think that it's only the big shots taking the greater uplift when it comes to embedded fintech?
So, if you really look at embedded finance, has always been happening in our lives, right from e-commerce companies embedding payment gateway for fulfillment of payments, which started like 20-25 years back. It's just that now new avenues are getting opened up for the same thing. And to get examples of embedded finance, you just need to look around. Just take an example of a school which wanted to offer a savings account to their children to cultivate savings habits. Or like you can take an example of a payroll provider wanted to offer salary accounts as a part of their payroll solutions, or insurance services as part of their solutions, or an e-commerce company wanted to offer lending or a pay later functionality which is part of their checkout process. These are like examples of embedded fintech.
Great, interesting cases. You took an example of school, payroll as well. Payroll companies providing insurance, or even advanced salary for that matter, for in terms of lending.
Right.
But whenever we talk about finance, regulations have been lot spoken about. Now you took an example of payments, and also there are other new banking platforms. We never thought that a non-bank entity would be able to provide business checking account or business current account to the SMEs and startup, but that's happening right now. So how do you see what would be the implications of regulations, or from the regulatory point of view, when it comes to embedded fintech, because that is something that's going to play a major role in defining what exactly or how exactly embedded fintech would be implemented.
Right. So if we look at the global fintech market, the regulators have always been positive about banking as a service, or API banking, which is actually the foundation for embedded finance. And luckily in India, we have very positive regulator who has always been looking at implementing new innovation and even nurturing new innovations. For example, we have something called regulatory sandbox by RBI, wherein fintechs can actually experiment new services or new products without worrying about the regulations. Now, specifically coming into the regulations, API banking is very well accepted or like regulated from a regulator's perspective. You would have actually seen the examples of PhonePe or a Google Pay, which works on the APIs from UPI in partnership with the bank. And you would have seen like prepaid wallet providers partnering with the bank to offer prepaid wallets. Even in the embedded finance example, we have an example of a Swiggy launching Swiggy Money in partnership with ICICI Bank. So from a regulator's perspective, I don't see there is any challenge. It's only positive, and the regulator is only going to actually encourage and bring more regulations, which will actually drive this in a very positive way.
Great to hear that the regulatory authorities have been at the forefront and have been supporting the financial institutions to drive the financial inclusion in the country. But Anish, tell me one thing, that you took an example of Swiggy. Let me take another, or any other, like you mentioned about payroll company or a school as well offering savings account to cultivate savings habit for the students. But when I let's take another example of another food tech startup, Zomato, or again Swiggy as well. They recently launched their Zomato edition, which is their credit card. Now I do understand whether it's lending or whether it's a pay later option. Primarily they're focused to increase the average order value, or maybe to increase the customer lifetime value. But what makes a company like a food tech company like Zomato to launch their credit card only when other options could also be explored? Given the fact that if I am a customer or a consumer of Zomato, I would not go to Zomato only to have a seamless experience of the payments, but rather I would derive value from the food that I'm ordering. But why only a credit card is something that comes up in my mind, because you took an example of Swiggy, and that's how I landed up in this.
Right. So it again depends on the business. So business can actually use to embed financial services or use embedded financial services either to add value to their existing customer base or build loyalty, or in some cases increase their order value, or in some cases maybe generating additional revenue. Let's take the example of Zomato. By offering offering a credit card, one, they are actually building loyalty to the customers. The customer would actually see this co-branded card every day, so next time when he'll always have this brand recall in his mind. Then secondly, there would always be special offers or when you are actually using the card on Zomato. It could be like rewards or food mile programs basically. So this is again like helping them in terms of the building a loyal or engaging their extensive set of customers. And the third aspect is whenever you issue a product like a credit card, you as the player which is distributing the service can also generate some additional revenues. It could be the interchange revenues whenever every time a customer actually uses this a card, not only at Zomato but could be at different other wherever he uses the card as well. So there are it really depends on the particular business, but primarily it's all about value, engagement, or generating entirely new channel of additional revenues.
Great. So additional revenue stream clubbed along with the loyalty
Great.
is something that's gonna let these non-fintech firms to drive the way for for embedded fintech.
Right.
Coming back to the question, to something that you said about API banking and banks exposing their APIs to fintechs and even other startups as well. What brings or what sort of triggers me is you mentioned about banking as service as well. So, and when the concepts are at this infant stage, it could be conflated as well. And these concepts like banking as a service or embedded fintech or even open banking for that matter could sort of lead to misinterpretation by the users, right? Okay. So how, what according to you, how is it embedded fintech is related to concepts like banking as a service or open banking? What I know is that primarily all of these are focused to remove dramatically, remove the barriers to entry for banking technology or processes. But what's the relation like? Because all of these aim to sort of do the same thing.
So all of these are really jargons for the common layman, and if you really look at it, all of these things are the same. An API banking is basically any bank extending its infrastructure so that a non-bank, which is defined as a fintech, can build banking services or payment services on top of it. And now what has actually really happened is it's not only the fintechs but even the other companies which were so-called termed as non-fintechs, which was actually not into the financial domain, having the need or finding it easier to embed financial services. So the real definition of embedded finance or API banking or open banking is anybody building financial services, combination of payments or banking and finance, on top of existing license provider. So a bank can also be termed as a banking as a service provider when they extend their infrastructure to a startup, or a startup which aggregates this particular infrastructure from multiple banks can be also be termed as a banking as a service provider. Now, this can also be termed as embedded finance provider, because at the end of the day, whether you are consuming these APIs or the banking as a service or embedding finance service, at the end of the day, these are all really the same terminology. But I completely understand that there is a lot of confusion in the common man because of this jargons like open banking, banking as a service, or API banking. So in a very simple way, I'd like to put it as anybody who extends this infrastructure or anybody who aggregates this infrastructure to build or enable building financial services, that's defined as embedded finance.
Great. I think that gives a lot of clarity. Now, when it comes to factors, influencing these new concepts in fintech, you mentioned about UPI taking a surge in terms of transactions and also in terms of value. And I think that happened post demonetization. And now, given the pandemic, right, if you see, there was an extreme long tail end of the merchants who sort of were pushed to go digital and adapt neo banking platforms to get their business checking account open. Though banking was under essential services, yet they chose to go ahead with that. They probably would have got used to the neo banking platforms 3 or 5 years down the line, but because of the pandemic, they were pushed. So, what role these external factors like demonetization or even the pandemic, right? What influence does it have? And how does it change the payment landscape altogether?
Right. I think the pandemic just accelerated the digital adoption for SMEs, like the way in India specifically we had the demonetization, which actually really accelerated the adoption of digital payments. Of course, this was also aided by the growth of the adoption of WhatsApp and supported by the geo effect, I would say. Due to this, during this pandemic, most of the small businesses realize that if we don't go digital, my business will suffer, or I can't go the traditional way or the legacy way moving forward. So everybody started adopting digital tools for enabling their business services, and again. While pandemic played a role, it also was happening naturally, because post the demonetization, what happened was that digital payments have become the adoption of digital payments have really reached to a point where businesses started exploring other tools for managing their business. So they started with things like Khata, for example. Then they realized that there are tools that is already in the market for automating my accounting. Then they realized that okay, there are services like neo banking place or digital banking place that would actually ease my business banking services as well. But this just got accelerated by maybe a 3x due to the pandemic.
So Anish, you mentioned that external factors like demonetization and even the pandemic accelerated the SMEs, the small businesses, and the users to adapt digital platforms. But what about the existing infrastructure? Like excluding these external factors aside, how do you see the current infrastructure of the financial institutions or of the country being ready for smaller business to sort of embrace embedded fintech?
Yeah. So the biggest challenge for embedded finance or API banking in India is the lack of the readiness from the banking platforms. But over the last 3 years, there's it's a new revolution, especially driven by the new fintechs, where they were actually pushing the banks or banks finding the needs of exposing those infrastructure. So I would say right now, at least from a bank standpoint, I do believe we are actually far ahead of some of our peers in the Southeast Asia markets in terms of the infrastructure readiness. And on the other side, because of this, a lot of players were able to simplify the access to this type of services. For example, especially a lot of the applications are mobile first, which helps this tier 2, tier 3, or even the small businessman to start accessing the services through his mobile in a very simplified way. So I do believe the internal factors, if I could call that, these are very conducive, or it's already in shape, and it will only improve, and the acceleration is much faster than what it was. If earlier it used to take around 2 years, 3 years, now this is happening in 3 months or 4 months.
Which means that the financial institutions and the banks are ready with the infrastructure to enable these small businesses to adapt or to embrace these new technologies. Speaking of which, reminds me of something called as low code, no code, building, citizen developers. You need not be a coder to sort of develop your fintech modules and embed it in your existing or core product, right? So what's your take on that? Do you think that how does the future hold, what does the future hold for low code, no code, and how does it look like? Do you see that the smaller businesses would be embedding, and what would be the impact like?
So this low code or no code is again like a jargon, and these jargons are which actually distances the layman from this so-called fintech. And now, since we are actually talking about embedded finance, it's actually democratizing fintech or financial services. Now, just to give an example of a low code or a no code approach, is if you today wanted to build a website, you can actually go to wix.com, select a template, just edit the headlines, and then you can actually launch your service without having any background of coding or technology. If you wanted to launch an e-commerce website, go to Shopify and do that. So this always existed, and this is the same thing which is now happening in fintech, wherein, like the example of a school wanted to launch a branded savings account for their children. They can imagine, like, they go to a website, they just change the school's logo and few details basically, and they get a website, they get actually a bank account service portal for their students basically. That's an example of a no code. Even what's happening in the in markets like US, there are like few players which has been focusing on the no code fintech, where you can pick and choose templates and the elements and create your own banking service. Or if you wanted to do enable payouts on your website, just add put a few lines of code on your website and you can actually enable that. So those kind of like no code fintech approaches will you'll see actually more of them in the coming months, or at least in the next 1 year, even in markets like India, where anybody without not being a developer will be able to actually build and launch fintech services.
I think rightly said, Anish. You mentioned about Wix and Shopify, and that's how I was able to relate that. It's been almost like 3 or 4 or even more years than that. Plugins were used by freelancers to sort of integrate, the payment gateway. If they don't have the capacity or capability, or engineering bandwidth to integrate the APIs, they would rather just install the plugins and be up and running. So things are already there. It is sort of taking a different trend, transformative trends in terms of you mentioned about payouts and all. Do you think it is just the awareness that needs to be created right now, and that's how or that will actually define the future of low code, no code, or maybe embedded fintech as well? Because all these, as you said, are jargons, but definitely awareness part is something that's going to play a major role in terms of building trust as well amongst the merchants or even the consumers.
Right. So what has actually happened is that the embedded finance, or like so-called embedded finance, always used to exist, like we discussed, right from the payment gateway, like from 25 years. Or an example, the right example that you give for embedded fintech was adding a WordPress developer or a WordPress website owner integrating payments by just uploading a WordPress plugin of that payment gateway, right? It's just that it got extended to multiple use cases. For example, now if a website wanted to do cashbacks, imagine there is a WordPress plugin for that. So he does, without programmatically integrating the payout, he can actually integrate payout as a service. Or like somebody wanted to offer an expense cards to their employees, they can drag and drop a plugin or a code basically, or a JavaScript basically, to embed that kind of a thing. So when it comes to, you mentioned about a point about awareness, that's true. Like the awareness needs to be created for this thing, but it will naturally happen because for example, payment gateway, everybody who offered an e-commerce website, they started figuring out that, okay, how do I enable online payments on my website? And there is something called payment gateway, or they discovered that there are something like plugins. So it's all as more and more service providers comes in the market, and also the use cases started coming. For example, when Zomato starts offering a co-branded credit card, even a small startup or maybe like a small restaurant startup in a particular tier 2 city may start searching, how can I also offer a credit card to my my customers? So the awareness will happen, but I think since there is a lot of focus around the globe now on embedded finance, that will naturally happen.
Thank you so much, Anish, for such an insightful sessions. To summarize, embedded fintech would be driven primarily by non-fintech firms and citizen developers. We will see multiple use cases in our day-to-day activities where embedded fintech would be clubbed in. We'll talk about low code, no code, and that's why I'm not letting you go that easily. Right. We'll hear how we can have more citizen developers through this technology and other emerging concepts as well. So guys, stay tuned.